Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. We're going to be getting into a really cool research article today. I'm so excited I couldn't even say the words correctly there. We're not going to go back and edit it and redo it. We're just going to keep on rolling. So This is an article out of the Annals of Internal Medicine in May of 2025. Not sure how we missed this one, but it's the effects of 4-3 intermittent fasting on weight loss. Here's the kicker, at 12 months.
12 months. Wow.
And
I love a good long-term study like that.
Me too. We don't see a lot of them. 8 weeks, 12 weeks, sometimes a systemic review of kind of a hodgepodge of studies where they look at tons of different parameters and timelines and just use statistical analysis. But anyway, I'm putting the cart before the horse. And it's a randomized clinical trial. So this is a really cool study, and we're just going to talk big picture about how to adopt a fasting lifestyle. So if you're new to the Fasting for Life podcast, we truly are on this fasting journey with you. We named it Fasting for Life because we want fasting to give you your life back and get you off that dieting roller coaster of counting calories and tracking macros. And inevitably, we always say, if you've been around for a while, if you're one of the Fasting for Life OGs, we say we always begin with the end in mind, right? So if you are new, this is going to be a really cool conversation for you to kick off. If this is your first foray with us, thank you for giving us a shot. If you want to know more about Tommy and I, head back to episode 0, episode 1, give it a listen. It'll give you some insight into how fasting transformed us personally in our lives. Yeah. Husbands, dads, business owners, life in general, how it transformed our health, which ultimately transformed our life. You'll understand why we do what we do week in and week out with the podcast episodes, why we have our resources. The most recent couple of episodes really target some specific action steps and resources that we have on our website. We've got our challenges. But Tommy's super excited to get into this research article and then make it actionable for you today. So we're going to do some myth busting as well. And once again, if you're a long-term listener, just thank you so much for the shares, the rates, the reviews, the 5-star kind. We're so grateful that we have so many. Those are our favorite, of course. But thank you for being on this journey with us, Tommy. I love, love, love this article. Hopefully you can hear the excitement in my voice.
I can.
Yeah, man. So just a really cool study on some long-term effects, right? So on some long-term, like what are the outcomes? Because we know if we look at the weight loss research, there's the 95-5 rule. So at any given time, 75% of the population can lose a statistically significant amount of body weight, 5 to 10%, right? But if we look at the 2-year mark to the 3-year mark, only 5% of those people actually keep it off. So that is really kind of like, wah, wah, wah. Like, really? Like,
yeah, it's not great.
Like, that's my goal? Like, I have to be like some superhero to become part of the 5%. But again, if we look at the population, 75% of the population is overweight or obese. And we're not saying that inherently the weight is an issue. It's the long-term health effects that turn into chronic lifestyle conditions that are related to insulin and metabolic function and all of this chronic lifestyle disease epidemic that we have. So if that's the outcome that we have from an historical data standpoint, then we really need to look at how do we make this sustainable and actionable on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah, and when we see a study like this, and we're talking about 4-3, we don't talk a whole lot about the 4-3.
No, what the hell is that, right?
Right. The 4-3 method of intermittent fasting, because 5-2 is more, in the research and in the conversations out there that we hear.
ADF,
and so,
TRE.
Yeah, alternate day fasting, a little bit of OMAD, maybe 1 meal a day, TRE, time restricted eating, all of these kind of tools. So when we see something like a 4-3, it's I like this article a whole lot because it's even easier to kind of dip your toes in the water. It's an easier place to start. As we're going to see, there are some great effects that come from it. But then also when we compare it to the alternative being just a continuous calorie restriction, and we get to put the two head to head over the long term. And so I'm gonna definitely give a shout out to just having some structure, trying something new, and we're going to see just kind of how it kind of pans out here. But I also love the fact that this study didn't just look at how much weight did they lose. It's also a matter of how realistic was it? What about the long term? How did that go? What about the food and the food choices, cravings? How long did they stick to it? All of these kind of things we're going to get into. And so for all of those reasons, I really appreciated this one.
Yeah, because here's the reality of it is typically people come to fasting for any air quotes diet because they want to lose weight and they want to see the number move because ultimately they want to feel better and move better and live better and help fix their labs and whatever it is, right? But that initial mentality is, all right, I need to eat less, move more, I gotta stick to my fasting schedule, and it's very urgent, right? So we want to zoom out to more of that, begin with the end in mind. What is sustainable long term? So truly, we want to your point, some of the myths that come up about something like this is that we get stuck in zooming in just to the immediate. What am I going to do today? What am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do next week? And we need to really zoom out. So it really 4-3 fasting to kind of start breaking it down, and then we'll get into the study, then we'll talk about the action steps and some of the cool data that came out of it. To your point, Tommy, about could they stick to it? What were the adherence rates? What were the results? What was the stickability of it, right? Mm-hmm. But really 4-3 is kind of a less strict form of alternate day fasting. So the framework for today is really does this strategy really beat do everything right dieting, kind of like the dieting mindset over the course of a year with numbers and guardrails, of course. So who this was and what was designed, it was a 12-month RCT out of the DRIFT study, so a randomized controlled trial in Denver adults 18 to 60. I love the broad spectrum here, with a BMI of 27 to 46. So we're talking middle of the over. And if you're new, we're not a fan of the BMI category, but we do use it. We talk more about visceral adiposity, body roundness index, waist to height ratio, waist circumference, right, as indicators of insulin resistance or weight loss resistance. But here, the BMI was 27 to 46. So we're talking about the overweight, middle of the overweight category, all the way up into the super morbidly obese category. However, no diabetes or major comorbidities. The average mean age was 42, and it was 74% female with an average mean BMI, a mean BMI of 34. I don't want to upset the math people out there by saying average and mean and messing up those terms.
Sure, yeah.
Mean age 42, 74% female, mean BMI of 34. So, what did the study look like? 4-3 IF group, so intermittent fasting. 4-3. What does that mean? So this is 3 non-consecutive fast days. And if you're familiar with ADF, true ADF is full nutrition day, full fast day. Full nutrition day, full fast day. Then there's the modified ADF, which is, and we've done some recent episodes on this, full nutrition day, modified fast day, which means you have a mini meal, 500 to 600 calories, women to men respectively. Right?
Sure. Okay. Yep.
So this is on your fast days, so your 3 non-consecutive fast days, this is kind of like a modified ADF where they said 20% of your maintenance calories. So an 80% reduction in intake. So this is are you fasting or are you eating? Right? Kind of line in the sand. We just want to zoom out for, again, long-term sustainability here. So you were still able to get some nutrition on those fast days, which I believe is going to result in what we saw in the adherence statistics. But the reality is then 4 days of ad lib, so ad libitum, but sensible food decisions. Right? And those calories you actually tracked on those fast days. So this is a very structured, very high touch, high support 12-month strategy.
Yeah.
Now, the DCR group, so this is the daily calorie restriction group, reduced their energy deficit by 34%. This was the same target as the 4-3 group, so they kind of made it, they equalized it between both groups.
Yeah, for long-term average calorie intake.
Yep. So they were looking at, okay, well, what is that going to result in terms of a calorie decrease for the fasting group, for the 4-3 group? And then they said, all right, DCR group, you're going to match that same average caloric intake. You're just going to do this daily, where the IF group is going to do it on that 4-3 schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And both groups got a high-intensity behavioral program. So biweekly groups, nurse-led, CBT skills, so cognitive behavioral therapy skills, targets of 300 minutes a week of moderate activity, and they had a gym membership. So we're talking about some really cool structure. This wasn't like the casual dieter, the on-off mindset. Both groups were like legit structured, like strategy for the 12 months.
Yeah, which you're going to need to be for, for taking on like a 1-year study like this. They're going to have some longer term guardrails like that. Otherwise, the like slippage comes in and things like that. And I wanted to mention that too, because even if you're going into fasting, like let's say you're newer to fasting, or you're new to a particular fasting method, could be 4-3 here, could be 5-2, it could be alternate day, whatever it might be. I think it's just really important to know that you could have a substantial amount of weight to lose. You could go into a method like this, or even like 16-8 fasting or 18-6 fasting. You might see some initial results, and then those results might slow down, and that may not have anything to do with fasting itself, but it might be that you've reached a balance point, and maybe you need a little bit of a different method, or you need to change around the method a little bit. And so, I just like to give caution to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, especially because a method like 4-3 might not take you all the way to your fat loss or your insulin, resistance reversal goals, but that's okay. It may still be a useful tool to have in your fasting tool belt, right? But going up for 1 year, I'm just putting myself back before I started fasting and go, if I started with 4-3 fasting, how long would it have helped for? How much of my 65 pound weight loss target would I have gotten to? And then what would I have done? Would I have said, okay, it stopped working, so fasting must not be the method that I need to get me to my goal? Or would I have, kind of adopted from there and tweaked the method and tried a new type of fasting, or maybe a little bit more fasting, or a little different food choices, things like that. But these guys were all locked in for that 1 year. So I just think it's a good contrast for the mindset there.
Yeah, for that opposite dieting kind of mindset that we all have suffered from over the years.
Right. Yeah.
So looking at the results, and then we'll unpack, kind of reverse engineer what our key takeaways here, is the 4-3 group lost 7.7 kilograms, about 8% of their body weight, and the calorie restriction group lost 4.8 kilograms, which is about 5% of the body weight. So the difference between the groups was about 2.9 kilograms. So you might not really, for us American folk, that doesn't really seem like a lot, but if you convert it into pounds, 7.7 kilograms is 17 pounds.
Wow.
With a non-aggressive fasting schedule. And the DCR group lost about 10.5 pounds.
Not bad.
Not bad, right? So both worked, right? Now, clinical meaningful loss in terms of fat loss, 58%, greater than 5% of your body weight, which is clinically significant. So 5% body weight loss. 58% achieved that in the 4-3 group, and 47% in the DCR. So you're like, okay, that's
okay. It's close.
Close. Greater than 10% weight loss, 38% of the 4-3 group reached it. We're only 16% in the DCR group.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's big. And that's to my earlier point. If you're talking about like longer term and you have some bigger fat loss goals too, then like think about daily caloric restriction. Sometimes it can start off, okay, it can start off motivating. You see the scale with some initial movements, but oftentimes that excitement goes away pretty quickly. Like things start to slow down as far as how they're moving on the scale.
Yep. And then, so body composition, fat mass changed in both, but it favored the IF group by more than 2 kilograms. So 6 kilogram loss in the IF group and about 3.9, so 4 kilograms in the DCR group. Then we had a slight increase in lean mass loss. So we're going to talk about this when it comes to our reverse engineering, what we recommend in terms of protein and resistance training. Mm-hmm. But here's the kicker, man. Here's a big one. The completion percentages. So the adherence or the attrition where people dropped off. 19%, so 76% overall in the IF group, 19% attrition in the IF group. Mm-hmm. So about 19, 20% people dropped off.
Yeah.
30% of people dropped off in the DCR group.
Wow.
In the daily calorie restriction group.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. And again, that's even with all of the structure, with the results. But, over a year, if you, average BMI of 34, these folks definitely had more fat that they would be able to lose and probably were wanting to lose as well. So it doesn't really surprise me that there's some drop off, but to be 50% higher in the daily caloric restriction, I mean, that's absolutely
that
substantial.
Reminds me of me.
Yeah.
Back in the day, right?
I never once, I don't think, stuck with a daily caloric restriction plan for a year. No. I'm trying to think of what the longest that I may have done it, despite the frustration and lack of results. Maybe like around 90 days, probably something like that.
I would say for me, I've gotten to the 6-month mark a couple of times, especially when I hired that functional nutritionist here in Houston. My wife and I were both doing it.
Yeah.
I think it was like the 6-month mark, but there was always that rebound. So I kind of want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the things I noticed that that we found that was really cool. Is so overall, just from the outline of the study and the stats, 4-3 produced modestly more weight loss and fat loss, and had better retention. So we're probably preaching to the choir if you're here listening to a fasting podcast, right?
Sure.
But we're still trying to zoom out, right? Which is why we found this study really cool. The 4-3 group actually slightly cut their intake a little bit more. But and here's the cool thing. If we're talking about these morbid obese and morbid obese categories, we know that there is a food relationship issue there.
Right.
Right? Potentially a binge behavior. That's why I love that CBT was in here. Some of the cognitive behavioral therapy skills that was in this really structured program. And we talk about that a lot in coaching. We probably talk about that more than anything else, way more than fasting. But the binge eating scale scores improved more in the IF group.
Wow.
Suggesting less loss of control eating despite the more aggressive kind of caloric restriction and fasting protocols.
Yeah, and that's like the opposite of the kind of boogeyman, fear talk that we will hear, from especially from folks who haven't fasted, or kind of more at the beginning of your fasting journey. It can be like, well, I've heard that you shouldn't fast too much because then it'll lead to more like binging later whenever you kind of open it up, like the floodgates are open, that kind of thing. But when we think about what potentially are good boundaries or good structure, even around our nutrition days, I mean, it starts with thinking about it not as a feast day, but as a nutrition day. I don't even like the term like up day or
fuel
down
day.
Yeah, it's fueling. Food is fuel, and it doesn't mean that every food choice has to be perfect. But I don't like to go into a nutrition opportunity thinking, okay, this is time for a feast. Because I know myself, I know the old way that I might have thought about, like, hey, going into a feast, okay, well, I've been saying no to all these other foods, and so now I could include some of these more like indulgent foods. I've been on the right track, and all this kind of stuff, and that's fairly common within the diet culture, on-off mentality, and it can be conditioned and strengthened through long-term yo-yo dieting, and so bringing that mentality and that self-talk into our fasting lifestyle is usually not very helpful. So just thinking about that, even with a 4-3 going into those nutrition days, going, okay, what is my nutrition going to look like? How am I going to fuel my body to take care of myself today, because my fueling opportunities are relatively limited? So make sure I'm having high quality food during that time, rather than how much food or what kind of things could I say yes to as far as like an opportunistic, kind of thing, right? Like very different mentality.
And it reminds me, I just had a thought flash of Finding Nemo, where fish are friends, where the sharks are doing like their weekly support group.
Yeah.
And they're like, fish are friends, fish are friends. And then one shark just
Right.
absolutely loses it and like tries to eat Dory or something.
Yeah.
You can tell I have 3 kids under 9. Like food is friends. Like food is our friend, right? Like
Right.
food is fuel. Food is for performance. Food is for healthy hormones, right? Like the problem in the dieting world is that, we put those strict on-off boundaries. So people most even with fasting will do short bursts of heavy restriction or heavy fasting and then swing back to overeating and freelancing and not really having that fasting structure. So the weekly kind of benefit doesn't change much, and eventually your weight drifts up over the calendar year, right? Mm-hmm. So in this trial, both groups were in a continuous program with clearly defined goals. So there's that fasting and fueling structure that we coach on and talk about all the time. So it's not, oh, I'm good this week, bad next week, right? It's really a foundational framework. So they weren't on some weeks and off some weeks. If they just simply followed the structure, then the results speak for themselves, right? So it truly shows that when fasting is structured and supported, it is sustainable. You end up with more fat loss and not this rebound explosion compared to this kind of, like we keep harping on this on-off dieting mentality. So
Yeah.
it's the unplanned emotional off periods that really get people off track. And I don't know if anybody's driving or listening, but if that resonates with you, man, that resonates with me a lot.
Unplanned emotional off periods.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that could be like after the external, like after the event has passed that you've been preparing for, or it could be like, hey, this is now turned into a tough season. Maybe there's loss, maybe there's grief, maybe there's frustration, or it could be a happy celebratory season too.
Yeah.
Where big emotions can lead to big eating opportunities or celebrations or saying yes to more things. And, it could be alcohol, it could be later meals. It could be like, man, I have so many opportunities or so many things going on that it feels like I can't really fast through this because I can't say no to a whole bunch of things.
Yep.
So I don't really have control over the timing aspect. So I must not really be fasting. But when you can take a method like this, where 4-3, this is pretty dang adaptable.
Pretty flexible.
Yeah, even if you have an opportunity, okay, well, you could turn that into your mini meal opportunity if it's on a fasting day, or if it's on a fueling, on a nutrition day, you could absolutely you can change around the timing with that. For a full nutrition day, I like to still make my 2 nutrition opportunities for a day like that. I like to make them a little earlier in the day so that it makes sure that I'm not pushing my food and my fueling into the more insulin resistant time. I want to protect my sleep and cut down on cravings the next day, and make sure I have just solid insulin sensitivity the next day. But at the same time, if I have a later opportunity and it's something I don't want to say no to, I can do that. You have the flexibility to do that. It's not like those things are happening all the time. So this is like in recent episodes past, we've talked about having a floor, a foundation, or a floor target of what does my day kind of look like. And yes, 4-3 might not be enough fire factor, might not be enough fasting to burn through all of those fat stores.
Yeah, if you've got 80 pounds to lose, you're thinking, my God, it's going to take me 4 years. But if you knew you could reach the goal at the end of 4 years rather than having to regain, 60 of that 80 you lost that year, and have that rebound train, that regain train, man, I think a lot of people would sign up for that, right?
Heck yeah. I mean, what if you could lose 20 to 25 pounds using this method and then maintain control over it so you didn't have to worry about those pounds coming off? And you can use it as one of your default floor fasting methods.
Yep.
Hey, even when it doesn't feel like a 10 and I don't feel like I can do any more aggressive fasting, I'm still going to be doing my 4-3. What helped me get some of the initial pounds off? Great. That's a great default to have kind of as a fallback method, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the problem isn't the fasting, it's those off periods, right?
Right.
So the off on this still had those guidelines, and that's what you were just talking about. And the fact that there was less binge eating type behavior over this study, because there was structure around the hard days, and it reduced the kind of screw it episodes that we see with classic weight loss strategies, right?
Whew. Yeah, those are tricky, slippery.
You had mentioned the happy celebratory type stuff. Obviously we just went through the holidays a couple months ago. But for us, it could also be the stressful time period. So my wife had a major concussion. I got shingles. My daughter's dealing with this odd kind of stomach thing, and we're like trying to figure that out. And so like we have a lot of that other life stress, and it's like, man, well, are we just going to, order DoorDash every night, or are we going to actually stick to the plan, right, to keep our family healthy, right? So it can operate in both the high stress or the high, life happy, weddings and celebrations and all that kind of stuff too. So when we talk about like guidelines for the hard days and a map for the normal days, this just becomes a lot more long-term livable than less white knuckling. When we look at it kind of in the big picture, long-term sustainability, from that standpoint. Yeah. We want to avoid that, those yo-yo dieting on-off type things. We hear that so much from fasters, like, yeah, I was doing really good, but then I kind of lost my mojo, right? I lost that momentum. So I just love this. And, one of the things we hear too is like one of the myths is like, man, if you eat very little on the fast days, you'll probably overcompensate or blow it on those fueling feast days that we try to avoid the terminology of. Yep. But the energy expenditure and intake data showed that the work you did on the fast days doesn't cancel out those sometimes overfueled days. So you're actually creating more sustainable long-term fat loss. Yes, you eat more on the non-fast days, but it doesn't undermine the work you did on the fasting days, right? On the 4-3 days.
On the fasting days, right?
On the fasting days.
Yeah,
sorry,
and part of the reason why it doesn't is because even if the calories are higher, your insulin level and insulin load is still staying on average lower because you have those significant hours in between those nutrition opportunities for insulin to get down to low levels, and then combine that with daily movements. Daily movement was very intentional here. We talked about that on a recent episode too, with the 15-day or 15-minute post-meal walking challenge, where you're really kind of building that into day-to-day structure. And so that helps give you a sense of structure, and it helps remind you that you are on track and you've made one decision over here that supports your fasting lifestyle and your long-term goals. Okay, well, now all of a sudden, in stark contrast to that screw it, kind of mindset that can hit us all, you're really feeling like, hey, I did something over here, I'm on track. Let me make another decision that also supports my long-term goals, and that might be setting my fasting timer. That might be, what am I going to put on my next plate for my mini meal or for my full meal, right?
Absolutely. And even with the fasting mindset, like fasting isn't just another diet strategy or weight loss strategy, right? So insulating ourselves from ourselves, the either all in or all off the rails, right? Comments that we hear so often with fasting, or any weight loss strategy really, but that, the no weekly plan swings between perfect and kind of the whatever mentality, either I'm fasting or I'm failing type mindset. We really want to define the fast days as the normal days and identify as someone who follows a pattern. You stick to a structure. You stick to a long-term plan. And the success metric is the weekly, monthly pattern, not the daily pattern.
Good point. Zoom out.
So kind of zoom out a little bit, and it just reframes your thinking about how fasting is a long-term sustainable lifestyle. Right? So instead of bouncing between the on-off rails, right, or the day-to-day, week-to-week, we're really looking at a 12-month, study that shows that when you concentrate your effort into a few structured hard days each week and keep some of the sane guardrails on the other days, you really can create a sustainable weekly rhythm that quietly adds up to more real fat loss over time without living in that diet prison.
Yeah. Without just that daily caloric restriction that essentially the things you need to say no to so you can kind of fit into that box, and you have to say no to those things day after day after day after day. And then that can get frustrating, little micro frustrations that really kind of add up over time, as opposed to having the the ability to, like, the flexibility to not have that feeling so often.
Yep.
And then so that's what really like comes up with when we think about 4-3, the as a kind of recovering former, grazer. Like, I have some grazing tendencies, grazing mentality.
Hold on. So yeah, we're gonna wrap up today's episode with a targeted, like, kind of action step. Is
Okay.
We have a resource on our website, thefastingforlife.com. It's a free resource. It's a fasting types PDF, and it helps you identify and puts you in a bucket of 3. If you can tell, our intention this year is really to let you hone in on you and figure out kind of your default behaviors and your thoughts and your mindsets and how you fast and all this stuff. Because we're really given, like, hey, go get this resource, do the work, and you're going to get some clarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a fasting types PDF, and Tommy just mentioned one of the fasting types, which is a gratuitous grazer. He's not only a member, he's also a president.
Absolutely.
There's the fasting freelancer, which I am the president, vice president, and board of that group. And then we have the weekend warrior mindset, right, which is about 60 to 65% of y'all listening. So it's a free PDF. It's just a few pages long. It's a quick read. And it'll help you identify how you can apply this kind of long-term 4-3 IF strategy to what you're currently doing to help you with that mindset piece. Right, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, when it comes to 4-3, like, my tricky thing for a day that's like a full nutrition day would be, let me not get into that more grazing kind of mentality. So I need to keep, like, the timing based guardrails up on a day like that, like an up day or a feast day or nutrition day. Doesn't really matter what I call it, but I know what it can feel like if I just feel like there's no boundaries whatsoever. And then it's like, if I break my fast and it's not intentional, or maybe it started in the pantry rather than
maybe
the
I
fridge.
ate too late.
Right. Yeah. If one of my meals was too late, absolutely. Waking up the next morning, cravings are high.
More grazing.
Absolutely. There's blood sugar swings because, a late meal is going to lead to higher blood sugar when I wake up in the morning. Then I'm going to feel that drop. And, the cycle continues. We talk about fast cycling. We're looking at food choices, food decisions, plates, and meal timing, and each fast being linked up to the next fast and to the next food choice as well. And one affects the other. So just understanding that, go grab the fasting types PDF, check that out, because when you start to see some of your default behavior patterns, you can put the right guardrails in place more easily, whether you're using a 4-3, you're using an alternate day fasting, you're using an OMAD, you're using a 16-8. It doesn't matter the fasting strategy behind it, but you can still prioritize, and you can see how you may fall back into some of those old default behavior patterns, and then how to insulate a little bit better.
Yeah, and then the fasting freelancer group, I mean, this is the personality type where it's like, I'm going to set my mind to it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a 72-hour fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll figure it out. Right? You're freelancing in those moments, those day-to-day decisions. And when we make so many decisions every single day, 226.7 food-related decisions a day from the research in the overweight or obese category, right, of the BMI chart, which, again,
wow,
we don't love it. But that's a lot of choices. So if you're freelancing through that, I don't know how many of those you're going to get right. So having this loosened long-term structure is going to be incredibly beneficial. And then the weekend warrior, Tommy, fasting type, just real brief before we wrap up, is really this idea that, like, man, I'm on it. I'm doing so great Monday through Friday, maybe happy hour. The halfway point of the week, we always like to say, is noon on Thursday.
Yep.
But from our work, how we are here in the States, it's like Monday through Friday, we work, we're diligent. And then the weekend is like, right? It's me time, right? I deserve this. I worked hard this week. More opportunities, less structure. So the weekend warrior mindset is, man, you do great Monday through Friday, but then you're restarting every Monday. And that just 100% fuels and feeds into that on-off mentality, that restart mentality, right? Like
Absolutely.
we say, no one likes to have a dinner or happy hour on Friday that turns into the wheels falling off on the weekend, and then you're back on Monday, not wanting to step on the scale or realizing that you're back to where you were and having to restart week to week, and you're just fluctuating between those 3 to 5 pounds. So There's a direct application to the fasting types. I highly recommend going to get that resource. But I just love this article that it was structured 12 months. Most of the studies aren't this long. It was, when you have that fasting support and that long-term structure in mind, it really takes out the volatility of those day-to-day kind of behavioral patterns or day-to-day decision making.
Yeah, so I think that starting with 4-3, like if you haven't tried 4-3, definitely step outside your comfort zone. Maybe give it a go and see what you think about it, because you might be a little surprised at the flexibility that it gives you, but also it can move the needle on the scale as well. It can also be a way to get some of your fasting mojo back too, because there's this tendency that we see, and I've had it before, I've felt it before, where I've done some longer fasts and I've been fasting for a while, but then all of a sudden I find myself, and maybe it's harder to stick to your fasting time or your fasting plan. You're having trouble doing that. 4-3, a method like this that allows some more flexibility without being just so overly aggressive. It's very different from, like you just mentioned, Scott, a 72-hour fast, right? Where I know there's going to be a lot of time for fat burning. I know the scale is going to move. I know that I could feel better if I could just get through it. But sometimes it feels like, I don't care if it's a 24-hour fast. I ain't getting through it right now. Like, it's just, I'm at a wall.
We hear that so often too.
Yeah. 4-3 can, or you could do 5-2, you could do 16-8, but I'm going to give a shout out to 4-3 as a way to kind of get back into it, and in a way that it's structured, it's flexible, it's obviously effective, but it's doable. It's more approachable. I can dip my toes into the water and kind of get back into it. Dust off that fasting timer. Give yourself a little bit of structure, but know that you have a high probability for success here, and really kind of commit to it for for the next couple of weeks here. Make some solid food choices, but don't worry about perfectionism. Leave the perfectionism at the door. Just go for, dang it, I want it to be pretty good. I want to follow that 80-20. I want to get it right 80% of the time, and then see where it takes you. Just take it a few days at a time. Don't bite off more than you can chew, if you will.
Yeah, and by no means did we say, like, don't ever do a 36, a 48, or a 72-hour fast,
of course,
right?
Yeah, those are great.
But, like, that's, as fasters, we typically get stuck in that pattern of using that as the only lever, which is where I love today's conversation, how
fasting
it really
ego.
zooms out.
You just mentioned fasting ego right there.
Yeah,
I feel like I've battled with my fasting ego in the past.
Yeah.
And it can be a tricky battle.
100%. So, Tommy, great conversation. Love this study. 12 months of data. Outcome measures are there. Checks all the boxes. Aligns with what we ultimately want for each and every one of you. So head to the website, grab the resource. Let us know if you got questions. But Tommy, as always, man, I appreciate the conversation, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.